our next speaker is a fifth-generation Iowan and was the 2018 Democratic nominee against Representative Steve King in Iowa's 4th District. He received nationwide attention for his strong grassroots campaign, falling just 3 points short in a district that Donald Trump won by 27 points. After college, he played baseball in 7 countries and then went on to work as a paralegal before he launched his congressional campaign. Now he is the state director for Working Hero, which is an anti-poverty nonprofit that focuses on raising awareness for the Earned Income Tax Credit. He's also a board member of One Country Project working with rural communities. Please put your hands together for J.D. Scholten.
Thank you. This is awesome. Thank you guys for coming. Thank you, TYT, for having me, and thank you, Jen, for giving somebody from Sioux City, Iowa, a chance to speak at an event like this. You know, last year we did 39 town halls, one in each county in the 4th District, and I started them all with the same stat. And at the time, the average person in Congress was 58 years old with a net worth of $1 million. Yeah. But I said I was different. I was 20 years younger and about $1 million short of that average. But in the last couple of years, I've gotten used to standing out. And that's what happens when you're the rural Democrat in Steve King's district. And my political heroes are people like Paul Wellstone, Tom Harkin, and Berkeley Bedell. And if you don't know Burke, his 1982 re-election poster said, the 1% control the government, the 99%, do you have a chance? Berkeley Bedell has some ideas about that, and that was in 1982. So looking back, you see that rural Democrats like that weren't that different, but we seem to be a dying breed right now, and that's what I'm really trying to do right now is bridge that gap in the rural communities, and that's why I think it's so important to talk about rural, but it's not talking about rural and leaving other groups behind. It's not talking about rural and leaving people of color behind. It's not talking about rural and leaving women's rights behind. It's not talking about rural and leaving the LGBTQ community behind. And instead, it's not either or, it's yes and. And that's the important part of it. So here's a reason why, because in rural America, it's been home to resilient communities of colors for generations. 54% of Native Americans and 25% of African Americans live in small cities, towns, and rural communities. And from 2000 to 2010, Asian American population in these rural communities raised by 37%, and the Hispanic population, same place in the rural communities in the same time period, 46%. And as we celebrate Pride this month, let it be known that rural America is home to over 3 million LGBTQ Americans. This is all in a larger equation that I love of rural America. And it's a place that I believe is worth fighting for. If you go about 2 hours north of here, my ancestors turned the fields of Worth County. And my inspiration in my life is my grandma Fern. And right after the election in 2016, I went to visit her at her retirement home. And she told me, she didn't ask, she told me, she goes, "JD, you need to take care of the farm." And a month later, she passed away. And at her funeral, that's where I felt that burden and that pull to do something about it. And as soon as I realized, like so many farms today, the future of our family farm wasn't about how hard we're willing to work or how committed we are to succeed or how well we're at managing the books. Today, the future of family farms and the farms of so many families across Iowa and across this nation, they're dictated by what happens in Washington, D.C., by farm policy created by politicians who care more about corporate profits than they care about the family farmers. The number one issue our economy has is that America hasn't had an answer to globalization as it affects the working class. And nowhere is that more prevalent as it is in rural America. Where I'm from, we're the second most agriculture producing district in America. It's the backbone of our community. And despite how much corn we grow, or beans, or hogs, and cattle, and pork, of the 39 counties, we only have 2 farm-to-table restaurants. And where I live in Sioux City, if you take Highway 20 east, the next 3 towns are Lawton, Mobile, and Correctionville. All 3 of them in the last 5 years have lost their grocery store. 2 of them gained Dollar General. And at Dollar General, you can't buy fresh produce. So if you want to make a BLT, you got to go into Sioux City to buy a tomato or grow it yourself. We have all this great land and farmers who aren't making a dime. Who are we doing this for? And why is it some of our poorest people in this great nation are next to some of our best soil? Whether it's the folks in the fields in the valleys of California or North Carolina, or right here in Red Oak, Iowa, where Iowa's junior senator, Joni Ernst, where 67% of the kids in that school community are on free or reduced lunch, which is one of the highest in the state. That's why we need to elect officials who will invest in small and local businesses instead of just helping multinational corporations get richer and sucking the wealth out of our local rural economies. In fact, our entire food system has been polluted by greed. For too many years, market consolidation has squeezed farmers both on the input side and on the output side, and as a result, less than 15 cents has made it back, of the consumer dollar makes it back to the farmer, which is the lowest all time. In the beef industry, the top 4 companies own 80% of the markets. In the chicken, the top 3 companies own over 90% of the markets. In the 2 biggest seed companies, Monsanto and DuPont, had 71% of the corn seed market in 2015 before Monsanto merged with Bayer and before DuPont merged with Dow. We are more concentrated than we've ever have in America's history. And we dealt with this 100 years ago when trust-busting Teddy Roosevelt was our president. Yeah. His administration filed 45 lawsuits on antitrust. We followed that up with William Taft, who did 90. We've dealt with this. And if you want to get a sense of the scope of how absolutely enormous the size of international monopolies are getting into our rural communities, just look at Trump's bailout money to farmers. Because of the initial $12 billion, 124 of that is going down to Brazil, and most of that's going to JBS, who owns most of the cattle in this country. And 1 in every 4 hogs in the state of Iowa is owned by China after they bought Smithfield, the largest hog company in America. The CEO of China Pork in 2017 made $291 million. That's more than the Apple's Tim Cook and Elon Musk, $291 million. And as I go around the 4th District in Iowa, you see hog farmers struggling to make a dime. There is clearly a thumb on the scale of fairness in the agriculture industry, and it is not on the side of the farmer. And despite low commodity prices, despite climate change, despite consolidation, despite tariffs, the number one thing when we go out to these rural communities, what do we talk about? Healthcare. In 3 out of every 4 farmers and ranchers, they believe that affordable health care is the number one thing that they can do to reduce business risk. But only 50% of them have the capability to pay off a major illness like heart attack or cancer or losing a limb without going into debt. And it's every gas station, almost every gas station in the 4th District that I stop at, there's a donation box of somebody who just got sick or somebody who just got in an accident. And we're the wealthiest nation in the world, but we can't take care of our people. But when you look up to our neighbors up north, who got universal health care going up there? It was Saskatchewan farmers. So, yeah. So it's not just about having big ideas. We also have to show up and do the work by getting out there. It's about taking our message to the people, talking and creating a healthcare system and an economy that works for all of us. Politics should be about what we can do, and our focus should be about how we can improve people's lives. I visited all 39 counties of the 4th District 3 times, most of them 5, 6 times. And the first time we went around, I heard the same thing. I heard, God bless you, somebody should run against that racist. The second... The second time, that's when we heard people saying, oh, he's just not bashing King, he's standing for something. And that third time, we saw hope. My campaign philosophy is very simple. Get out to the people, prove that you're trustworthy, prove that you're going to fight for the people of your district, and you're going to earn votes regardless of their voter history. If we do that, we will beat Trump. If we do that, we will retake the Senate. If we do that, we will start building and rebuilding the power in the state houses across the country, and we will compete in small cities, in these towns, and in farm country. And I'll leave you with this. Some of the best advice I got in the last cycle was one of the first things I heard from a Native American activist who's a family friend of mine, and he said, JD, if you want change, you have to get uncomfortable. And once you get uncomfortable, you have to get others uncomfortable. So I'm challenging you all, if you want change, it's time to get uncomfortable. Thank you very much. My name's JD Scholten.